Most people believe that the fastest way to get someone to listen, change, or respect them is by giving orders. They bark commands, they push, they demand, and then they wonder why they're met with resistance, defiance, or silence. Here's the truth: human beings don't respond well to being told what to do. The second you try to control someone, they push back. Influence isn't about control, it's about connection. It's about guiding people so they choose to follow you, not because you ordered them to, but because they want to. Today, I'm going to show you why telling people what to do is the fastest way to lose their respect, and what to do instead if you want real influence that lasts. When you think about influence, many people immediately picture authority, power, or control. They assume that if they speak louder, stand taller, or issue stronger commands, they'll be listened to and followed. But in reality, influence doesn't come from domination or control. It comes from respect. Respect is the foundation upon which influence is built, and without it, any attempt to persuade or lead will crumble. The reason for this is simple. When people respect you, they are more open to your perspective, more willing to hear you out, and more likely to take your words seriously. Respect transforms communication into collaboration instead of confrontation. Consider the moments in your life when someone truly influenced you. Think about a mentor, a teacher, or a leader who left a lasting impression. Chances are, it wasn't the person who yelled at you, ordered you around, or belittled you into obedience. More often than not, it was the individual who made you feel seen, valued, and understood. That sense of respect, both given and received, creates trust, and trust is what makes influence sustainable. You can scare people into compliance for a short while, but you cannot inspire lasting loyalty or genuine cooperation without respect. When someone tries to control others, they often end up pushing them away. A manager who barks orders may get results in the moment, but over time, the team loses motivation, creativity, and initiative. Compare that to a leader who treats people with dignity, listens to their input, and respects their abilities. That leader earns influence not because they demanded it, but because they cultivated it. People naturally want to follow someone who honors their humanity instead of crushing it. This applies to every area of life, whether in the workplace, relationships, friendships, or even parenting. The person who earns respect earns influence, and influence is far more powerful than control. Respect doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean you let people walk all over you or that you avoid being direct. In fact, some of the most respected leaders are the ones who can set clear boundaries and expectations without ever raising their voices. They don't need to force compliance because their presence commands attention. Their words carry weight because they've earned credibility through consistent action, fairness, and integrity. Influence through respect is not about softening your stance. It's about strengthening your connection so your stance actually matters to those around you. Psychologically, when people feel respected, their defenses go down. They stop perceiving you as a threat and start engaging with you as an ally. This makes them more receptive to new ideas and more willing to collaborate. On the other hand, when people feel disrespected, their survival instincts kick in and they push back. No matter how logical or beneficial your suggestion might be, if it comes wrapped in disrespect, it will be rejected. Respect opens the door for influence to even take place. Influence that grows from respect also lasts longer. If you tell someone what to do without earning their respect, the moment you're no longer around to enforce it, they stop listening. But if you've built respect, your influence continues even in your absence. People carry your lessons, your example, and your guidance with them because it feels authentic and earned. That's the kind of influence that endures beyond moments and becomes part of someone's mindset. People are naturally resistant to being commanded because commands strip away their sense of autonomy and freedom. The moment someone feels they are being told what to do, their instinctive reaction is to defend their independence, even if the instruction itself is reasonable or beneficial. This is why people resist commands but respond to choice. Human beings want to feel like they are in control of their own decisions. When you try to take that control away, you trigger pushback, but when you offer options and allow them to decide, you activate their willingness to engage. Influence isn't about forcing compliance, it's about creating the environment where people willingly choose to act. Think about how you feel when someone tells you, "You have to do this." Even if it's something you might have done on your own, the phrasing changes everything. It no longer feels like your decision, it feels imposed, and most people dislike the feeling of being forced. On the other hand, if someone says, "You could try this," or "Here's one option," suddenly the power of choice is back in your hands. You feel respected, you feel acknowledged, and you are more likely to act because it feels voluntary. That psychological shift makes all the difference between resistance and cooperation. This principle is deeply rooted in psychology. People have an inherent need for autonomy. It is a core driver of human behavior. When autonomy is respected, people feel empowered, motivated, and engaged. When autonomy is violated, they feel controlled, manipulated, and defensive. That's why parents who constantly order their children around often face rebellion, while parents who guide their children and allow them to make decisions build trust and cooperation. The same applies to leaders, managers, friends, and partners. If you want someone to genuinely listen and act, you cannot rob them of choice. You must give them space to own their decision. Offering choice doesn't mean being manipulative or pretending to give freedom while still pushing your own agenda. It's about shifting your mindset from control to collaboration. For example, instead of saying, "You need to finish this project by Friday," you might say, "We need this done soon. Would Friday or Monday work better for you?" The outcome is the same, the work gets done. But the person feels they had input and agency in the process, which makes them more committed. Choice transforms obligation into ownership, and ownership is what drives lasting effort. People also respond to choice because it signals respect. When you allow someone to decide for themselves, you're saying, "I trust you to make a good decision." That trust encourages them to rise to the occasion. It engages their sense of responsibility instead of their sense of defiance. Commands often create passive compliance, where someone does the bare minimum because they have to. Choice creates active participation, where someone puts in effort because they want to. The difference in energy, commitment, and outcome is massive. In every sphere of life, from personal relationships to professional environments, this principle proves true. A partner who tries to control the other's actions creates resentment, but a partner who gives space for choice creates harmony. A boss who dictates every detail stifles innovation, but a boss who provides direction while allowing flexibility fosters creativity and loyalty. People don't just want to be heard, they want to be the authors of their own actions. Influence is not about dictating what people must do, it's about creating opportunities for them to step into their power and decide for themselves. Asking questions instead of giving orders is one of the most effective ways to influence people because it shifts the focus from authority to collaboration. When you give an order, you put yourself in a position of control and the other person in a position of compliance, which automatically creates tension. But when you ask a question, you invite the other person to think, to engage, and to take ownership of their actions. This small shift changes the dynamic from "do what I say" to "let's figure this out together," and people are far more receptive to that approach. Questions have a unique psychological effect. They bypass resistance because instead of triggering a defensive response, they activate curiosity and problem solving. If you tell someone, "Do this task now," their instinct might be to push back or at least question your authority. But if you ask, "How do you think we should approach this task?" you engage their mind. They start thinking about solutions, and once they propose an idea, they are more invested in seeing it through. Asking questions makes people feel valued, respected, and part of the process, which builds stronger influence than simply giving orders ever could. Another reason questions are powerful is that they create a sense of autonomy. People want to feel that they are making choices for themselves, not just following someone else's directions. By asking instead of telling, You allow them to retain control over their decisions while still guiding them toward the outcome you want. For example, rather than saying, "Stop being late to meetings," you could ask, "What do you think would help you get to meetings on time?" This puts the responsibility back on them while still addressing the issue. The difference is that they come up with the solution, making them more likely to stick with it. Asking questions also builds trust and respect. When you ask someone for their thoughts, you're showing that their perspective matters. This is especially important in leadership and relationships because people don't want to feel like they're just following orders. They want to feel like their voice has value. A leader who asks questions creates a culture of inclusion and collaboration, while a partner or friend who asks questions strengthens connection and communication. Influence grows naturally in these environments because people feel seen and heard. This approach also disarms conflict. In situations where emotions run high, giving direct orders can escalate the problem, but asking thoughtful questions can calm it down. If someone is upset and you say, "Stop overreacting," you'll only fuel their anger. But if you ask, "What's making you feel this way?" you give them a chance to express themselves. That simple shift changes the energy of the conversation and positions you as someone who seeks to understand rather than control. Once emotions are diffused, influence becomes possible. Beyond communication, questions encourage critical thinking and personal growth. Instead of spoon-feeding answers, asking questions pushes people to reflect, analyze, and come to their own conclusions. This not only makes them more engaged in the present moment, but also equips them to make better decisions in the future. The goal of influence isn't just to get compliance now, it's to shape mindsets so that even when you're not there, people carry forward the lessons you've guided them to discover. Asking questions does that in a way orders never will. Ultimately, the reason questions are more powerful than commands is that they turn influence into a partnership. People don't feel forced, they feel involved. They don't feel silenced, they feel heard. And when people feel like they are part of the process, they are more motivated, more cooperative, and more loyal. Asking instead of telling is not about being soft, it's about being strategic. It's about understanding that true influence comes not from imposing your will, but from inspiring others to think, decide, and act alongside you. Leading through example instead of demands is the ultimate test of influence because people watch what you do more closely than they listen to what you say. When someone tells others how to behave but fails to embody those very principles, their credibility crumbles. Demands without action create hypocrisy, and hypocrisy destroys trust. On the other hand, when your actions consistently reflect the values, discipline, and integrity you expect from others, you set a silent but powerful standard that speaks louder than any order ever could. People naturally follow those who model the way because example inspires in a way commands cannot. Think about leaders you've respected in your own life. Were they the ones who barked instructions from the sidelines, or were they the ones willing to roll up their sleeves and demonstrate what needed to be done? Most people are drawn to the latter because example creates authenticity. It shows that you are not asking anyone to do something you aren't willing to do yourself. That alignment between words and actions builds respect, and respect leads to influence. If you want others to be disciplined, show discipline. If you want others to act with integrity, let them see integrity in you. If you want loyalty, be loyal first. Leading through example is about embodying the very qualities you wish to inspire. There's also a psychological reason example is more powerful than commands. Human beings are wired to mirror behavior. We pick up cues from those around us, consciously and subconsciously, and we often imitate the people we admire or respect. That's why children model their parents' behavior more than they listen to their lectures. It's why employees reflect the culture set by their leaders more than they follow the written policies. People absorb what they see and then act accordingly. If your actions and your standards are consistent, you don't have to demand compliance because your example naturally sets the tone. Another advantage of leading through example is that it builds trust faster than words alone ever could. Words can be empty, manipulative, or self-serving, but actions are harder to fake. When people see consistency between what you say and what you do, they begin to trust you. Trust is the foundation of influence because without it, people may obey temporarily but they won't commit wholeheartedly. A leader who demonstrates courage during difficult times gains more loyalty than one who simply tells others to be brave. A partner who shows kindness in daily actions earns more love than one who only talks about being kind. The power lies in the proof, not the proclamation. Leading by example also creates accountability. When you set the standard through your actions, you hold yourself to the same expectations you ask of others. This eliminates the double standard effect, where people resent leaders or authority figures who demand sacrifice but indulge themselves. Nothing erodes influence faster than hypocrisy, but when people see that you live by the same rules you set, they feel a sense of fairness and integrity that strengthens their willingness to follow. Accountability makes influence sustainable because it fosters mutual respect. The ripple effect of example is far-reaching. One act of integrity can inspire others to act with integrity. One display of resilience can encourage others to keep going in the face of difficulty. One commitment to excellence can raise the standards of an entire group. Influence created through example is contagious because it spreads without force. It motivates others to emulate you voluntarily. Demands, on the other hand, might generate compliance in the moment but rarely inspire lasting change. People may follow your orders when they have to, but they'll follow your example when they want to. That difference is everything. Ultimately, leading through example is about embodying leadership in its purest form. It requires discipline, consistency, and humility. It demands that you live your values daily, not just talk about them when convenient, and it challenges you to influence people in a way that feels authentic and enduring. When others see you live out what you believe, they are moved not by obligation, but by inspiration. They don't follow because they were told. They follow because they see something worth following. True power is guiding, not forcing, because the essence of influence lies in your ability to move people willingly, not in your ability to push them against their will. Forcing someone into action may achieve short-term compliance, but it leaves behind resentment, resistance, and a lack of genuine commitment. Guiding someone, on the other hand, allows them to step forward on their own terms. It respects their independence, engages their will, and creates a bond of trust that makes them more receptive to your influence in the long run. Real leadership is never about control. It is about helping others see the path clearly enough that they want to walk it themselves. When people are forced, they often give you the bare minimum effort because they feel stripped of their choice. They may obey the letter of the command but not the spirit behind it. They comply out of obligation, not inspiration, and as soon as the pressure is gone, their effort vanishes too. But when someone is guided instead of forced, the decision feels like their own. They invest more energy, creativity, and persistence because they believe in the choice they made. Guidance ignites ownership, and ownership is far more powerful than compliance. Guiding is also about subtlety and patience. It's not about pushing someone down a path, but about lighting the way so they see it for themselves. This might mean asking the right questions, modeling the right behaviors, or providing the right perspective at the right time. For example, instead of telling someone, "You need to stop procrastinating," a guide might say, "What would it feel like if you finished this early and had more freedom later?" That reframes the situation and nudges them toward a better decision without stripping away their sense of autonomy. Influence gained through guidance feels supportive rather than oppressive, which is why it lasts longer. True power also lies in the fact that guidance fosters respect. People rarely respect those who bully or pressure them into compliance, but they deeply respect those who help them grow, improve, or succeed. A coach who pushes an athlete too hard with constant force may cause burnout or rebellion, but a coach who guides with encouragement, challenge, and belief in the athlete's ability inspires peak performance. The same applies in personal relationships, business, and everyday life. People want leaders who guide them to their best selves, not rulers who dictate every step. Guiding instead of forcing also creates stronger relationships. Force creates distance because people feel controlled, while guidance creates connection because people feel supported. This connection builds loyalty. Someone who feels guided will return to you for advice, insight, or leadership because they trust your intentions. Someone who feels forced will avoid you the moment they no longer have to comply. Influence that comes from guidance builds bonds. Influence that comes from force burns bridges. The difference between guiding and forcing is also the difference between fear and inspiration. Forcing uses fear as leverage, fear of punishment, fear of rejection, fear of losing approval. Guidance uses inspiration, showing what's possible, encouraging growth, and helping people believe in themselves. Fear may spark quick results, but inspiration drives long-term transformation. If your goal is not just to get people to move, but to help them rise, guiding is the only real path to power. In the end, guiding requires more skill, patience, and emotional intelligence than forcing. Anyone can demand, threaten, or push people into action, but it takes true strength to lead in a way that honors choice, builds trust, and inspires loyalty. That strength is what separates people who simply hold power from those who truly have influence. True power is not measured by how many people obey you when you demand, but by how many people follow you because they believe in the direction you are leading.